this is Jaewon and I've just finished my third year animation in Sheridan and I'm back! In third year, the biggest part of the program is the group film project. From September to mid-April, we spent about 8 months working with a team to create one animation. So this year, I chose the 3D animation and worked on a team project. And I got to experience how a real studio pipeline works from story development all the way to editing. Also in this project, my idea was selected for the final stories. And through the process of seeing how it's changing, I think I learned more about what I personally valued in storytelling. Because of that, I also spent time more reflecting on myself this year, even writing a lot of journals entries along the way. Also compared to second year, the workload might have felt lighter as time, but I definitely spent my most energy in this year and I also learned the most. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the accurate 3D animation production pipeline and the reality of working with a team project and the changes I went through during that process. I also be sharing my stop motion internship in this summer and why I decided to shift 3D to stop motion. So let's get started! Part 1. Formatting the group film team. Toward the end of second year, we were asked to choose a stream 2D rigging, hand-drawn, 3D or stop motion. At that time, I was interested in 3D, so I chose that stream. There was also a step where we had to submit a portfolio to get into the stream. At first, some of my friends and I were actually pretty worried, like, what if we don't get it? But later we found out that since it's just a school project, so no one really got rejected at that stage. Then around the summer, we got an email saying our team had been decided. When I checked, our team were made up entirely of Asian students. Most of them were Chinese, along with a Korean student and a Turkish student. So I think it was a pretty unique mix. Also, usually there were about 2 3D teams each year, but this time there was only one, and that was us. And that's how our team Dropbox Studio was formatted. Part 2. Production pipeline. In the first semester, once the story was finalized, we split into teams for props, character design, and storyboarding and worked in parallel. After that, the process moved into modeling, rigging, and the story reel stage. In the second semester, we focused on animating and music and then worked everything with lighting, rendering, editing, and sound. Usually, background music is done by hiring a composer, but luckily one of our teammates was able to compose the music. And honestly, it turned out way better than we expected. So that was a really nice surprise. Most of our classes were also centered around the group film, and during presentations, we had to explain our parts almost like we were pitching to investors. Now, I briefly go over the main roles I took on during the production and how I approached them. First, I was the story lead where I was involved in story development, storyboarding, and creating the story reel. I was also the compositing lead responsible for the overall editing for the film and bringing up the final visual quality. In addition to that, I also contributed to the prop texture team and the animation team and helped with the poster design and our team branding as well. So in the story development stage at the beginning of the group film, we went through a process of creating and developing our own stories. Our students were grouped in teams of 2 or 3, and each team had to come up with a story and present it in storyboard class with some simple drawings. While developing the idea with my 2 teammates, I received feedback that I was adding too many details and that the story was becoming a bit overwhelming. Through that process, I realized that instead of adding more and more elements, it's more important to focus on the parts that really matter. So I refined the story and presented it to the full group. And in the end, my story was selected by the team. Before this, I didn't think I was that interested in creating my own stories, but through this experience, I started thinking more deeply about the characters, their emotions, and their narrative. And I realized that I actually really enjoyed the process of building a story. After the story was decided, we went through another stage of developing it further as a group. We looked at the original story and discussed what we want to change, then worked on writing the final script and organized things like the environment, props, and dialogue in more detail. After that, as I moved into the storyboard team, while other teammates were working on character design and props, our storyboard team focused on creating the storyboards and developing the story reel. A story reel is basically a rough video version of the storyboards made before the animation stage. And this is where important details like the length and timing of each scene are decided. At first, I didn't realize how important this stage was, but once we actually started animating, there were moments where things didn't quite match the storyboard. That's when I understood that this stage needs to be as detailed as possible so that everyone on the team can work in the same direction. After finishing the story reel, I worked on the texturing task I was responsible for, and once the first semester ended, we all moved on to the animation stage together. Around the time when the animation was almost finished, I also worked on the final touches for the poster design. Other teammates handled the sketches and scene setup, and I was responsible for things like effecting, title design, and color grading. At that time, there were discussions about whether the poster should be blue or yellow, and in the end, we decided on the yellow tone through a vote. Compositing is something I've always felt the most confident in, and while it's usually split between multiple people, I ended up handling it on my own for our team. I worked on detail like motion blur, additional camera movement, speed adjustment, and also added elements like cobwebs to show that an empty mailbox hadn't been used for a while. In scenes with sunlight, I also added backlight effect. I also adjusted the overall color to keep consistency across different shots. There were some technical issues as well. For example, the road texture was too detailed, so when it moved, it looks a bit noisy. I just tried to smooth that out in compositing. There were also moments where the character's face looked distorted, and I was able to fix those in editing as well. Another thing I worked on was changing the sky color during a key scene. I adjusted it to have a sunset tone because I wanted the passage of time to feel more natural as the main character reads the letter. Instead of relying only on acting or staging, I thought color could also help express that time was passing. So the sky starts off blue and gradually shifts into a warmer sunset tone. However, since the textures and lighting were already built for a blue sky, changing everything would have required a lot of extra work from the team. So instead, I adjusted the color in compositing to match that direction. Happily, a full yellow filter made the image look dual, so I used masking to isolate just the sky and color graded separately. If the sky had been rendered as a separate layer, this would have been much faster. But since it was merged with other elements, I had to adjust it frame by frame, which took quite a long time. I also worked on the intro animation with the flying paper, designed the main wanted poster, and created both the intro and outro sequence. For the school logo stamp, I connected two versions, one with and one without the stamp, so that the S mark appears naturally at the moment it's stamped it. But honestly, one of the most challenging part wasn't compositing itself, it was downloading the file. Our team rendered everything in EXR format, which separates layers but creates very large files. Even downloading a single scene took a long time. Since there were over 80 scenes, it took quite a while to download everything, and later on the file became so heavy that even the school computer ran into storage issues. I remember the compressed file alone being around 52 GB. Part 3. Issues and behind the scenes. Just my thought. First challenge I experienced. One of the biggest challenges I felt during the girl film started from the story development stage. The story I originally wanted to tell was about a character who longed for a connection but didn't know how to approach others. So he ended up stalling and reading other people's letters. Then one day, through an unexpected moment of connection, he begins to reflect on his actions and chooses to break away from his bad habits and change. For me, the most important message was that people can make mistakes, but they can also recognize them and choose to grow. Found the courage to move forward. Even in a harsh world, I thought showing that kind of possibility and change was the core of the story. However, my teammates saw it in a different way. There were stronger opinions that since the character did something wrong, he should face some kind of consequence, or that the story could lean more toward a comedic tone. Because of that, the letter, which originally felt more like an invitation, was changed into something closer to a threat, and the character's change no longer felt self-driven, but more like he was being pushed by the situation. The main theme also shifted from people can change through a turning point to something more like connections can still happen in different ways. I wanted to show a character who chooses to reach out and connect on his own, but as that part became less emphasized, I felt the story moved away from the direction I had in mind. So in the end, the story was decided through a vote, and why I did feel some not happy, but I decided to focus on doing my best within the direction the team had chosen. Second challenge I experienced. Another challenge I felt was whether the story direction and the character were actually being communicated clearly to the audience. Within our team, we had talked a lot about how lonely the main character was and why he ended up stealing letters, so we all understood his backstory really well. But for the audience, they don't have the background, they can only judge based on what they see on screen. So I keep wondering whether the audience would actually be able to relate to the character. I felt this even more during the animation process. I personally saw the character as someone who knows his actions are wrong, and is somewhat anxious and withdrew because of that. So I thought small details like looking around nervously or walking quickly after stealing a letter would be important. But some of my teammates interpreted the character as more confident and playful. So in some scenes, he moves more casually, even even after doing something wrong. As those differences built up, I felt that the characters' emotions and situation became harder for the audience to fully understand. Each individual scenes looked good on its own, but the overall emotional flow of the character didn't always feel consistent. This became more clear during the screening. In moments where our team expected the audience to feel tension or emotion, they're often reacting with laughter instead, actually laughing harder a lot. One scene I had a lot of thoughts about was when the character explained his situation at length. To me, it felt like adding explanation rather than deepening emotional connection, and I was concerned that it might break immersion. And during the screening, I saw people reacting like, why is he explaining this right now? Or even laughing at that moment. That's when I really realized that emotion doesn't always come through just because we intended to. At one point early in the process, I also suggest that if the character's portrayal and ending were learning this way, it might be better to clearly define the film as a comedy. However, the team still saw it as a still emotionally story, and that made me question whether I was just seeing it differently. In the end, the film was received more like a comedy rather than an emotional story, but fortunately, the audience did laugh a lot and seems to enjoy it, so it still felt like a positive outcome overall. Through this experience, I realized how important it is to clearly define the story direction and character interpretation early on, and to maintain that direction consistently until the end. Another smaller challenge I experienced was related to compositing. Throughout the semester, I keep saying that I wanted to take on the compositing work, since it's something I can really work fast. But when the time actually came, some of my teammates were a bit worried about whether I could finish everything on my own. And they keep asking me, are you sure you can do this, or? Especially since we were getting closer to the deadline, and no one wanted to risk not finishing the film. But I was able to finish everything on time in the end. And after that, I received a lot of positive feedback from my teammates, which made it a really rewarding experience. Hahaha. There were also some funny moments along the way. At one point, our production manager opened my animation file to make a change, and there was somehow an extra version of the main character just standing in the scene, which was pretty funny. Near the end of the project, our team even started repeating lines from our film, and it's kind of turned into an inside joke. There was also a moment where a computer cable actually melted in the lab while the rendering team was running renders, which caused a bit of chaos. Part 4. Other classes and projects. And now I briefly go over some of the other projects I worked on. At first semester in my animation class, I complete a scene about a character named Mr. Button who messed up during a presentation. Today I'll be talking about... Huh? Thank you so much. Wait, what's going on? Can you just move on to the next slide? I'm out of here. In 3D, I worked on things like modeling a car, sculpting Bart Simpson, and creating my own character model. And in the second semester, I learned rigging, which was honestly really difficult. So I gained a lot of respect for the teammate in our group who handled rigging so well. And for stop motion, in the first semester, we did some basic animation exercise. In the second semester, I actually joined the class as an extra. At first, I thought I have to stick with 3D, so that's why I chose rigging as my focus. But I became really interested in stop motion, so I asked the professor if I could also join the class, and thankfully I was allowed to. Through that experience, I realized that I enjoy working with physical materials much more than technique 3D work. So I started making puppets and props, including a broken cup puppet, which actually inspired a new story idea that I'm planning to use for my graduation film. I also built a cabinet props with doors that can actually open and close. In life drawing, I continued to practice figure drawing. And I also create opposite characters. In storyboard class, I worked on storyboard based on a given script, as well as a production package and storyboards for my upcoming graduation film too. Through this process, I was able to organize my ideas more clearly and started feeling excited about the story I want to tell. We also started preparing for internships, learning how to build portfolio, writing resumes, and prepare cover letters. In the second semester, I began applying to different positions and doing interviews, which helped me get ready for entering the industry. Overall, while building my portfolio and reviewing my past works. At the time, I was a bit scared to change direction, since many of my peers were already settling into their paths. But I decided that before graduating, I wanted to try everything I truly wanted to do. So in the end, I chose to shift my focus. I quickly updated my resume and portfolio again, and received feedback from my co-op advisor and applied to a stop motion project. So I was able to get accepted after the interview. Part 5. Side projects and personal activities. I also had a few personal activities this year. First, I did a couple of small maquettes. In the first semester, I participated in a Zinzone event where I'm preparing some new product. This time, I set up my table more like a mini exhibition, which a concept focused on sharing the ideas and stories I wanted to express. I also took part in the 24-hour animation contest, and our team placed 48, where I contributed to prop design, animation, editing, and voice acting. In the second semester, I joined a game expo with friends to run a booth, and that period was honestly so busy. It feels like everything just flew by. I also spent time with friends in a small stitching group at school, and even though we couldn't meet as often toward the end of the semester, those memories we shared felt really meaningful. Additionally, I participated in a presentation event at a nearby church called The Jesus I Met. It was a time when I was thinking a lot about faith, so I organized my thoughts and shared them through that presentation, and I ended up receiving the top award. Through all of those experiences, I was able to grow closer with meaningful people, and it also made me feel that the way I express what I think and feel is more heading in the right direction. And with that, my third year comes to an end. Honestly, there were definitely moments where I felt like I could have done better, but I also want to say thank you to everyone who went through all the ups and downs together. Through team project, I realized how important my own ideas are, but at the same time, I also learned how important and how difficult it is working with other people. And through the process of building a story, I was able to understand more clearly what kind of emotions I care about and what kind of stories I want to tell, and learning how to accept different perspectives and still do my best with it. That was really valuable and meaningful experience for me. So this summer, I'll be joining a stop motion project internship, and I'm really excited to learn more and continue growing in a new environment. In first year, I hope to build everything I've learned and create a film that feels more personal and sincere. Also, one more thing in this summer, I'll be running a group animation tutoring with my friends from Sheridan. If you're interested of learning animation or preparing portfolio by yourself, you can check the information in the description. You can check more details. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.